Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, Shlita. We'll continue our learning. We'll close out our first week, learning in the merit of our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, for the brave soldiers of the IDF, for those who need healing, and of course for the release of every single hostage. The next chapter is Gili HaTorah Be'aretz. Iker Gili HaTorah Hu Be'eretz Yisrael. The main revelation of Torah is in Israel. As we saw earlier in chapter 2, that no prophet can give prophecy except in Israel or about the land of Israel. And even the revelation of the oral tradition is in Israel. The major Beis Din, the major court, which had over 70 members, was situated in Jerusalem, and that was the mainstay of Torah Sheba'al Peh, of the oral tradition. V'heim amudei hahora'ah, and they were the foundations, the stalwarts of teaching for the Jewish people. V'heim chok u'mishpat yotzei l'chol Yisrael. And this is based on the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Mamrim. All laws and judgments and statutes went to the Jewish people through the major court. But based on Hagadol hayosh from Shivim ve'echad zikenim, as I mentioned, there were 71 scholars who sat on this Beis Din. Lo Beis Din zed shenikra gam Sanhedrin Hagadola, and this Beis Din, which is also called the Great Sanhedrin, nitna haTorah samchus or smechus l'taken takanos ligzar gzeros. They were given the responsibility to establish takanos, any sort of enactments, any sort of gzeros, any sort of decrees. Val kol Yisrael lishma b'kalo, and it was responsibility of the Jewish people to listen to their voice. Shenemar va'asisa al pi hadavar asher yagidu lecha min hamakom hahu asher yivchar Hashem shemarta lasos kol asher yirucha. Pasuk in Devarim says that you have to do whatever it is that they tell you, but it says min hamakom hahu, from that place that Hashem will choose. Of course, that place referring to the Beis Din Yerushalayim. Umitzvos asay lishmo laharasam, and it is a positive commandment to listen to their teaching. V'ha'over eno shemea over b'islos asay, and someone who does not listen to their teaching or to their enactments and doesn't listen to what they tell people to do is in violation of a negative commandment. Again, from the Rambam. V'achar shenisbatel Beis Din Hagdol, but now that we no longer have the great Beis Din, we don't have the Sanhedrin. So then the Semichah, as we would call it, the tradition given one to the next, so then there is something lacking in that chain. And only as needed in specific instances, the sages enacted certain decrees, let's say in times of great need. Furthermore, the Beis Din of the Sanhedrin, the Great Sanhedrin, they also had the responsibility that they could adjudicate differences or machlokas, any sort of dispute between the chachamim, between the sages themselves, and therefore the Torah was one. In other words, there was one indisputable dispute settler, if that makes any sense. However, once there's no longer Sanhedrin, so then we have so many more opinions, and the light of Torah is diminished, until we come sort of compartmentalized, so we have silos of Torah. So in other words, in the time of Sanhedrin, their word was final, and if there was a machlokas, if there was a dispute among chachamim, then they would have a way to settle it. We don't have that anymore. Lo rak she'elos haklal shebehen esek bein hizagdol k'shuras Eretz Yisrael, and it wasn't just the general questions that the Beis Din, the Sanhedrin, dealt with that are connected to Israel. Ela afdine hayachad shebaim lifnei haBeis Din, but even individual matters that came in front of the court. Kamo dine misa, knossos, malchus ashar hadinim, capital cases, any penalty cases, malchus, lashes, other laws, tuliyim be'eretz Yisrael, they all depended on Israel. Shekains mechusum shal chachmei Yisrael adun b'chol hadinim shebetorah tuli b'smicha shesamach Moshe Rabbeinu's talmidav, because this all relies on the smicha, on the chain of tradition that was given from Moshe Rabbeinu to Yehoshua, etc., similar to what we see in the first Mishnah of Pirkei Avos. And they gave it to their students. And this tradition, this authority was passed over from generation to generation. But to give smicha, the term that we kind of use loosely, but to give smicha a Rav to his Talmud, to his student, can only be done in Israel. However, outside of Israel, a Rav was not allowed to give smicha to his student. And this happened at least 300 years after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. That when there were so many gzeros, so many restrictions and so much persecution, and the settling of the Jewish people in the land of Israel was wavering, and the Torah study was dwindling, and perhaps there were no halls of study open. Then the notion of smicha, of transmitting from one generation to the next, from one teacher to the next, virtually disappeared. And even though the center of Jewish learning was in Babylonia, hence the Babylonian Talmud, but even though they were study halls filled with people and Torah moved there, nevertheless, the notion of smicha and of giving one to the next still was not put back into place. Why? Simply because they were outside of Israel. So it comes out that those sages in Babylonia, they couldn't adjudicate matters for the klal. They can only adjudicate matters or relate to matters or make decrees based on what their society in Babylonia needed at the time. Because in order to at least keep this community going, so people who would not have real smicha, again, but the classic sense of smicha in Eretz Yisrael, they could do that based on the Gemaras in several places. We see that the establishment and the maintaining of the Torah depends on the land of Israel. So we're going to continue along this thought as we go further, but in the meantime, I wanted to thank everyone for listening this week. Wish everybody a restful and peaceful Shabbos. Shabbos Mevarach and Parsha Shmos. And again, please keep davening for our brothers and sisters in Israel, the Gadiyef, and the safe return of all the hostages. Till then, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.